Okay, so noodling is great, and I am not against that. I actually encourage you to noodle because it's fun, and well, if we can't have fun playing guitar, why are we doing it? But I do want to urge you to first, when you sit down to practice, first practice the techniques that are the hardest. Practice the techniques that you're having the most frustrations with and most difficulties, okay? Do that first. Let's say your rhythms are pretty proficient, but you're struggling with that galloping technique, right? Okay, so the first thing I would recommend doing when you pick up your guitar is going after that for the first, let's just say 5 minutes. And 5 minutes might not sound like a lot, but I mean, if you sit there and go over a technique for 5 minutes, it's going to get you to a really good place if you're consistent with that. So, for example, if galloping is something you struggle with, I'd do something like this, just a simple riff, right? Okay, I would do that over and over and just practice that slow at first. I like what my good friend Dave Orman said. He plays with Nasty Savage. He was on the channel here a while back. He mentioned that slow is fast. So if you practice it slower at first, then you can speed it up and maybe throw in some power chords just to like spice things up a little bit so you don't get bored with it, right? Once again, I'm not against you noodling, but just make sure those first few minutes of your practice are focused. Let's go back to the galloping real quick. So you did this for 5 minutes, right? 5 minutes of that, then just go off the beaten path and noodle with some power chords and riffs. You see, if you practice the hard stuff first, the stuff you're struggling with, when you go to noodle, you're going to start implementing the hard stuff in like it's second nature, and you're going to get really good and really tight at the stuff. The next tip, and this is pretty important, is practicing within a specific key. And what this is going to bring out is not only accuracy in your playing, but also playing the notes that fit and sound good within a particular key. So I would say start by choosing your favorite key to play in. Let's just say E minor, for example. So I would say, well, learn the chords that fit within that key. Now, before we go forward, I am not saying that you need to stick to this little box of rules, and I'm not saying that you need to fit your guitar playing to the theory. We're going to simplify theory number one. I'm going to show you some very simple tips in this short segment here, but we're also going to make theory serve you. It's going to serve your playing. And I'll tell you why in a second. You'll see why. So the first thing is I would gain the knowledge of knowing the chords within that key. So E minor, for example, we know that there's E minor, a G, an A minor, a B minor, there's a C, and a D. So if we just play those with power chords because we're playing some metal here. Now, how do I know those chords fit within that key? How do you know any chords fit within a particular key? I personally learned this just over years of playing, okay? Just decades of playing live music, playing along with bands in different genres. So I was able to learn the keys pretty quickly just playing by ear and playing along. However, there's a simpler and faster way to learn this, and it's by using a tool called the circle of fifths. Now, when I first saw this, I call it the wheel of death. I'm like, I don't want to have anything to do with this. This looks too much like being in school in a classroom, and I wasn't very good at that. So here's a quick way though. Whatever key that you're playing in, the chords that are within that key, the notes and the chords within that key are right there by that chord. So we're looking at E minor. Right above E minor, because that's connected, okay, everything's connected here. Right above E minor is what? Is G. Okay, so we know those two go together. They are relative, right? So we take the two beside it, to the right side of it. They're connected, right? So those two fit in the key of E minor. Now we also take the ones connected to the left. So all of those chords right there, well, that's an easy way to see which chords fit within that key. Now you might say, well, wait a minute, Jason, I've got a song that's written in the key of G. Here's a cool thing about how this is all connected. You see the key of G, it's right above what? E minor. So they're connected, right? Those are the relative relationships there. And what's beside them to the right and what's beside them to the left? Actually, they're the same chords in the key of E minor. So this kind of simplifies it for you. Now, this does not mean you always have to play those chords, right? Just because it fits within that key, again, we're not fitting your playing into the theory. We're using theory to give you the knowledge to gain freedom. So you can go outside of that and you're not guessing. The second thing I would tell you to learn, we're talking about E minor here, let's go back to E minor, is I would learn the E minor scale. A quick way to know the scale is you're always going to start with that E note, right, for the E minor scale, and you're going to end with the E note. The other thing to know about a minor scale in general is you're not going to skip a fret. You're just going to play a half step between the second and the third notes, and also the fifth and the sixth notes. That's it. So your E minor scale, let's just start this on the 7th fret of the A string. Notice how I did not skip a fret. I only played a half step between 2 and 3. And then 5 and 6. Since we end on the same note, just an octave higher, we end on the same note we start with, well, we can just start that scale all over again. Now again, we're not learning scales for the sake of playing scales. We're connecting these notes across the fretboard so that we know which notes perfectly fit within the key of E minor so that you don't have to guess. And what does that allow you to do? Well, that gives you the freedom to create, to go outside of that, knowing you can always come back and land on your feet. So again, we're not just playing those scales, we're using those notes to play within that key, in this case, E minor. Before we move on to the next tip, so 2 quick things. You can either practice like what I just did. I just played some chords within the key of E minor and then just played a little lick after that. So you can kind of go back and forth. I got another video where I talk about that. Even better, you can play along to backing tracks that are within certain keys, and that's going to help you practice more. And I actually include backing tracks, and I have a whole chapter 4 on theory, in the free guide, Metal Riffs and Licks. So if you don't have that yet, there's a link in the description. Grab a copy. Tip number 3, so let's just get into this. So you learn this riff right here. I know that's in the key of E minor, what we just went through, but it's a different riff. That's actually a specific riff. I'll tell you what that is in a second. But what I want you to do is don't just learn that riff. I mean, yeah, get it down, that's fine. I want you to do something else with it though. Add your own flavor to it. Now, I've talked about this in practically every lesson and video that I've ever put out there on YouTube, especially over the past several years, because I feel so strongly about this, because this is where you start to come away from just being a guitar player that's just kind of dabbling and noodling to developing your own style of playing guitar your way. Okay, so what I would want you to do is something like this here. So let me play that riff again. What if you played that, you can do this, what if you played that in a different key? Like, let's just start maybe with an A power chord instead of the E power chord. We'll play the same thing, but just play it in the key of A minor. right, so I played that not only in a different key, but I played it a little differently. I added some notes. Now, why did I do that? I'm doing this on the fly, by the way. This is not rehearsed at all. Playing in that different key with some of those higher notes, it brought out something more. I heard something else. And this happens when you start messing around with riffs and start to make them your own. You'll start hearing different things. Go with that. I want you to give yourself the freedom to go with what you're hearing, what you're feeling. Like you may pick I don't know, the Master of Puppets riff. And I'm probably going to play this wrong, by the way, because I haven't played it in forever. But this little riff right here. What if you did something like this instead? And we're not trying to screw up Master of Puppets, but what if you just took that idea and just went somewhere completely different with it? Okay, so that sounded nothing like the original riff, like way off, right? But that's not what we're going for here. We already played the riff, we got the idea, but I'm thinking, okay, what if we slowed that down a little bit? That was one thought I had. I don't have to play it as fast. What if we just slowed it down? And what if we took some of those notes and just, I don't know, just went somewhere else? I started hearing something else in my head as I slowed it down. When you make a change, this is my point, and this is why I want you to practice this. When you make a change to a riff, you start hearing other things, and this is you writing the song, essentially. You know, every riff, we say, has been borrowed. And that's because we're inspired. As we listen to music, I can tell you I was inspired, and still am, by Joe Satriani. So a lot of my playing is influenced by him, especially when it comes to guitar solos. And I was heavily inspired, no pun intended, by Kirk's playing, Kirk's leads. Hetfield's playing, Mustaine's playing, because that was my first experience with heavy metal back in like 1989 when I first started playing guitar. Testament, Alex Skolnick, you know, Metal Church. I could keep on. I listened to Scorpion. So all of these early influences, along with some of the heavier stuff I'm into now, like I love a lot of the European metal bands, Amon Amarth, Arch Enemy. I love bands like Nightwish, Delane, Sonata Arctica. I love Tom England with Evergrey. I'm actually going to go see Obituary live. They actually live in my area here, so I'm going to see them in a couple of months. And I could keep naming bands after bands, right? But my point is, we all have these bands, these musicians that have inspired us over the years. So as you learn, if you're learning their riffs and songs, as you learn these things, don't be afraid to venture outside of that and start creating, because that's what you're meant to do. You're a guitar player. You don't just play guitar, you create. And this really opens everything up for you. I also truly believe this makes you a better guitarist, because now you're playing by instinct, right? You're like allowing yourself, your feelings, your emotions, and what you're hearing inside, you're allowing that to be translated onto the fretboard. So you are becoming something far more than you ever imagined when you take a riff and start making it your own. I actually have one bonus tip I want to share with you, and I think this might be the most important one of them all. But real quick, I talked about my free Metal Riffs and Licks practice guide. If you do not have that, it is the ultimate metal guitar practice guide. Grab a copy of that. I give this away to all my YouTube subscribers, my way of saying thank you for supporting me on the channel here, and thank you for watching my videos. So there's a link in the description. Grab your copy of that. You'll get a full guide, and there's even links to supporting videos and backing tracks you can download. Now, if you already have Metal Riffs and Licks and videos like this help you, then consider joining the Jason Stallworth Guitar Academy. I would love to see you in there, so there's a link in the description. You can learn more about my Guitar Academy. The final thing I want to share with you real quick is this. Do not, and I urge you, please do not discount your own way of doing things on guitar. Your little nuances, your little quirks, the way you approach the notes. Maybe you have like this weird way you bend the strings or whatever, and maybe even this guitar player over here says, "Whoa, that doesn't sound professional," or "That doesn't sound right, that's not the way you do it." But you know, that's just the way, that's just what comes out when you play. I want you to be okay with that. If every guitar player pulled off every technique the exact same way, textbook, it would be a very boring world of music. So while I do want you to get better at techniques, I want you to get tighter, I want you to play smoother and with clarity, I also want you to embrace what's naturally coming out when you play. And that's going to be those little quirks and those little nuances. And those are the things that make your style, well, your style. And the style, the signature style that every great guitar player has, well, that's what makes them who they are. So I just want to encourage you to embrace your own way as you're nailing things down, as you're getting tighter and you're getting cleaner and all that. I also want you to just strongly embrace who you are as a guitar player and musician, and give yourself that freedom to be your own guitarist. So I'd like to know which of these tips helped you the most. Drop that in the comment. And remember to check out the links in the description of this video. If you don't have Metal Riffs and Licks, grab a copy of that. If you've got that and videos like this help you, check out the Jason Stallworth Guitar Academy. Links in the description. I hope this video helps you, and I encourage you to use these tips every time you sit down to practice. It's going to help you get better and, of course, develop your own style of playing. Until the next video, as always, keep it metal and keep playing music.